Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Corbett Report. I'm your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com with another edition of Solutions Watch here in July of 2024. And here's a question. Have you ever interacted in any way whatsoever with any social media platform? Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social media platforms? Do you have an account on any video sharing platform, YouTube or Vimeo or anything else, in which you have posted videos and or liked and subscribed and commented on videos? Have you ever interacted with any of the mainstream websites, Reddit and other places, in any way, shape, or form? Well, if so, then guess what? You are helping to feed the beast, the AI beast. Now, okay, this is Solutions Watch, so we're going to dwell about not on the problem, but on the solutions to this problem. But first, let's talk about this problem, the size, the scope of the problem itself. And I recognize that there are a lot of people in the audience for whom AI is total malarkey, complete baloney, 100% smoke and mirrors, absolutely nothing is going on there. And if they've ever used a large language model, I assume that they think there's probably someone on the other side typing back responses furiously to them who've never used it to write code or anything that of the sort. At any rate, believe it or not, whatever you think about AI, there are demonstrable problems with the way the large language models are being constructed. And oh boy, are you seeing some of that news in the news headlines, the mainstream news headlines. For example, just on a lark, I went to the search bar here and typed in AI energy grid and looked up news results, and here's what's coming across the newswires these days. AI energy use strains the grid, slows sustainability efforts, powering the future of AI, addressing the looming energy challenge. Energy guzzling AI derails tech firms' climate goals, etc., etc. The use of wasted energy for AI computing. Again, I invite you to explore that topic for yourself, but as I say, if you follow the mainstream news feeds, you have definitely seen this story popping up time and time and time again in recent weeks, really, and presumably ramping up to something. What could that something be? Well, if you were a Corbett reporter, you will already know, because you've read my recent article on scientists create organic slave computers. What could go wrong? In which I explore, well, one of the reasons that you are seeing the AI energy usage problem being hyped in the mainstream media right now, and the potential solution that the technocrats have waiting in the wings for that. But here's another aspect of the problem of large language models that is, again, equally undeniable no matter whether you think it's all smoke and mirrors or not, which is, well, the fact that they're snarfing up all of the data that is being generated on the web, or at least absolutely as much of it as they can, and then using it willy-nilly to construct, well, something like the sentient world simulation. You will remember, of course, DARPA and their sentient world simulation, and whatever happened to that program. Well, here we are in 2024, and, well, essentially there are digital avatars that people can interact with on large language models that are constructed from whatever data trail you're leaving behind. And I know because people, for some reason, sometimes send in their interactions with ChatGPT or other LLMs, having conversations with James Corbett or about James Corbett, i.e. an AI-generated James Corbett. Oh, cool. Wonderful. Well, that problem has been addressed in recent years. For example, here's a Wired article from last year. ChatGPT stole your work. So what are you going to do? And this is putting it in the context, obviously, of artists and creators and other things who have found that their work has been used to train these large language models and AI art generating models and other such things. So this article starts by saying, if you've ever uploaded photos or art, written a review, liked content, answered a question on Reddit, contributed to open source code, or done any number of other activities online, you've done free work for tech companies, because downloading all this content from the web is how their AI systems learn about the world. Tech companies know this, but they mask your contributions to their products with technical terms like training data, unsupervised learning, and data exhaust. And of course, impenetrable terms of use documents. In fact, much of the innovation in AI over the past few years has been in ways to use more and more of your content for free. This is true for search engines like Google, social media sites like Instagram, AI research startups like OpenAI, and many other providers of intelligent technologies. This exploitative dynamic is particularly damaging when it comes to the new wave of generative AI programs like DALL-E and ChatGPT. Without your content, ChatGPT and all of its ilk simply would not exist. Well, okay, that's a good way of framing this problem. I suppose it speaks to the problem in a number of different respects, because even disregarding ChatGPT and DALL-E and these other large language models and art-generating devices and what have you, well, even disregarding that, just the fact that the tech companies are snarfing up all of this data about you is problematic in and of itself, but let alone what they are doing with it. Anyway, this article goes on to talk about different types of actions, data leverage, that can be used to confront this problem. For example, direct action, what individuals can do by banding together to withhold, poison, or redirect data. Regulatory action, pushing for data protection policy and legal recognition, blah, blah, blah. Legal action, communities adopting new data licensing regimes or pursuing lawsuits. And market action, demanding LLMs be trained only with data from consenting creators. All right, well, you can probably imagine, if you know me and my work, you can probably imagine which of these actions I'm more excited about and which I'm less excited about. Here's a spoiler. I don't think that magical pieces of paper passed by any legislator in any legislative assembly is going to really stop these big tech monsters from doing their monstrosity work. And I'm not holding my breath for courts to gavel down on the right side of history with regards to their rulings on various lawsuits, but as is the writ and remit of Solutions Watch, I'm not here to poo-poo or dismiss anyone taking action in any way that they feel is going to be productive. By all means, write your congressman, write your MP, file that lawsuit. I hope you are successful. But obviously, I am more in line with the idea of market action. Certainly, I think there is something very fundamental to be said about the fundamental choice that we make about what technologies we use and how we use them, and how we can not just boycott big tech, but boycott the open source, decentralized tech that we want to see bring to fruition, and we want to ultimately be the way that we interact online to the extent that we act online. So that is important. Also, direct action. Yes, of course. Anything that individuals can do right now to start making a difference or a dent in this problem is to the good. So they mentioned a few intriguing possibilities: withholding your data, poisoning your data, or redirecting your data. Now, this might put you in mind of some previous editions of Solutions Watch, and I hope it does. If not, well, you're in for a treat, because you can go and explore these to your heart's content. One of which, as I mentioned, unplugging from the Matrix, where we talk about, well, how about, maybe you could imagine, is it possible, could you actually extract yourself from the Matrix by, well, not using it? Again, that's a very tall order, but we could at least put more thoughtful, conscious attention into how much we are using various big tech technologies and making a concerted, conscious effort to disentangle ourselves from these devices and to not be so 100% devoted to them. Well, anyway, there's a lot to be said for that, but realistically, in today's day and age, making a living and trying to make ends meet, you're probably going to have to be online in some form, using devices and tech in some form. And if that is true, well, then what can you do about that? Well, how about salting your data? I hope you remember this simple little idea from a couple of years ago, in which I suggested, well, why do you have to give your real and true and honest-to-God information every time you fill in a form or do anything online? Certainly there are times when you might be committing perjury or liable to legal action if you put down some wrong information in the wrong place. But when you are not legally obligated to, why on earth would you provide your real information? In fact, I just received an interview request in which they were asking, as part of my bio, for my exact birthday. So I said, sure, you can give my real and true birthday of January 1st, 1901. Anyway, why on earth would you give out your real data, especially when you are not obligated to? So salting your data is one thing that you can do. And of course, you'll remember my exploration of simple sabotage, talking about the idea of sedition, subversion, and sabotage in the field manual for how to do that and how to throw various gears in the spanners in the works, as it were, of the gears of the New World Order. So there are definitely things that we can do proactively, especially with regard to the data that we are putting out there into the online ether. But there was an interesting word there in that article that we were looking at. For instance, individuals banding together to withhold, poison, or redirect data. Poison your data. What on earth does that mean, and how do you go about doing it? Well, here's a very specific example of that I have recently come across that I think is at least worthy of our exploration as a concept, as an idea. So let's get into it. It's called the Glaze Project. Of course, the link to this and all of the other things I'm talking about today will be in the show notes, so please check that out at your leisure. But long story short, the Glaze Project, including Glaze, Nightshade, WebGlaze, and others, is a research effort that develops technical tools with the explicit goal of protecting human creatives against invasive uses of generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI. Since 2022, our team has released multiple tools, including Glaze, a tool to disrupt art style mimicry, Nightshade, a tool to disincentivize training without content on scraped images, and WebGlaze, a free web service to make Glaze accessible to artists with limited computing resources. All of our tools are free to use for artists and will never be used to generate profit. All right, sounds good. And if you are interested, of course, I will throw in the link so you can read more about this project, the team members who are behind it, what they're doing, etc. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. So you can find out, for example, on their page about what is Glaze. They talk about Glaze is a system designed to protect human artists by disrupting style mimicry, as in AI can generate a painting that looks just like this other painter that you know, that has been trained on this publicly available data of various sorts. At a high level, Glaze works by understanding the AI models that are training on human art and using machine learning algorithms, computing a set of minimal changes to artwork such that it appears unchanged to human eyes, but appears to AI models like a dramatically different art style. For example, human eyes might find a glazed charcoal portrait with a realism style to be unchanged, but an AI model might see the glazed version as a modern abstract style, a la Jackson Pollock. So when someone then prompts the model to generate art mimicking the charcoal artist, they will get something quite different from what they expected. So you get the idea. This program will make the AI think that this type of art is actually a completely different type of art. So it becomes relatively, if not useless, at least certainly less useful for generating mimicry of various art styles. They do warn that Glaze is not a permanent solution against AI mimicry, because systems like Glaze face an inherent challenge of being future-proof, always possible for techniques we use today to be overcome by a future algorithm, etc. And it's designed to protect against individual mimicry through fine-tuning. It is less or not effective when an attacker is trying to replicate a style that is already trained into base models. So Van Gogh and Impressionism and what have you is probably already well trained. So there are limitations to this, but it is at the very least, an intriguing idea, and uses a sort of almost well, it takes advantage of the way the AI sees things to show it things that are not there. That humans don't see, but the models do. Interesting. Well, okay, so what is Nightshade then? Well, Nightshade is a tool that turns any image into a data sample that is unsuitable for model training. More precisely, Nightshade transforms images into poison samples so that models training on them without consent will see their models learn unpredictable behaviors that deviate from expected norms. For example, a prompt that asks for an image of a cow flying in space might instead get an image of a handbag floating in space. One of the advantages of this, it doesn't rely on the kindness of model trainers, but instead associates a small incremental price on each piece of data scraped and trained without authorization, i.e. the more of this unconsensual data scraping you do, the worse your model will get, ultimately. And again, there's a lot more details to go through, and if you are interested in the details of these systems, of course, This one being called Nightshade because it acts as a type of poison. It is poisoning the model, so that the more of the Nightshade treated data that the AI model is scraping and trying to generate further data from, the more it will be poisoned and will start to act erratically. So if you want the technical details of these systems and how they work, there are a couple of papers that have been provided. Glaze, Protecting Artists from Style Mimicry by Text-to-Image Models, talking about Glaze, a tool that enables artists to apply style cloaks to their art before sharing online. So again, very specific thing that at the very least artists might be looking into as a way of protecting their art style. And Nightshade, Prompt-Specific Poisoning Attacks on Text-to-Image Generative Models, which points out that Nightshade also generates stealthy poison images that look visually identical to their benign counterparts and produces poison effects that bleed through to related concepts. More importantly, a moderate number of Nightshade attacks on independent prompts can destabilize a model and disable its ability to generate images for any and all prompts. So, this is, in a sense, harkening back to that simple sabotage idea that I was talking about. The little things that people can do to derail systems of control of various sorts, or in this case, unwanted intrusions into our data. And having not used these, I'm not an artist myself, and I don't put work online in that sense. I don't put out artwork. So I have not used these particular programs. So I haven't installed them. I don't use them. I can't speak to their ability to work or not work. I, as always, leave that to people in the crowd who are in this space to vouch for its authenticity and reliability or otherwise. And I would very much be interested to hear that feedback. But having said that, I think, once again, like so many of the ideas on Solutions Watch, the idea is the idea itself rather than any particular specific application of that idea. So the idea of poisoning your data is actually an interesting idea. For example, tricking models into seeing things that are not there is probably something that could be employed by people with technical know-how in ways that perhaps could, even beyond simply the AI application, perhaps the data scraping that is done by the NSA and DARPA and whatever other alphabet soup agencies, perhaps this type of technique could also be used in those circumstances, depending on how much knowledge we have of the types of data scraping that's going on. Anyway, I'm putting this idea out on the table because I think it is a nice extension and elaboration and slight reconfiguration of some of the ideas that we've talked about before, like salting your data, like simple sabotage. And I thought this was a nice, nifty, innovative little idea. And so I would very much like to hear from anyone who has, for example, used Nightshade or Glaze, or has looked into those programs and seen how they operate, or anyone who has ideas along these lines of ways that we can poison the data for AI or other data scrapers of various sorts. Because, make no mistake, the more you are online, the more your information is online, the more they will be able to reconstruct virtual avatars of you from your online data trail. So if we can poison that data trail, well, that might be something to look into. I am putting this idea out on the table. I'd be very much interested to hear your feedback. So as always, Corbett Report members are invited to log in and to leave your feedback on this particular edition of Solutions Watch. But that's going to do it for today. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com. Looking forward to talking to you again in the near future.